So, welcome back to the Dive Line. I'm Craig, and over in his studio we have Jim. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Craig. How you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, excellent. Pleased to be back, and we've got a really interesting guest to talk to today. We've got Rich Walker of Ghost Fishing UK. Before we get on to Rich, I would just like to say a huge thank you to everybody that's liked and shared what we do. That's very much appreciated, and also to all of those that have subscribed to our YouTube channel. Thank you very much. And if you haven't, why not? Please do it now. Jim.
Yeah, same as you. I don't know why you asked me to come in then.
Let's welcome Rich Walker.
Hi, Rich.
Hi, Rich.
Hi, Craig. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much for coming on and joining us so we can have a chat about ghost fishing and exactly what you do. Jim, I think you wanted to start off with some questions about how Rich actually just got into diving.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just asked him. So, yeah, Rich, how did it all start for you? I mean, you've obviously been diving a long time, and this is a passion for you, isn't it? So just how it started, really.
Yeah, it is, Jim. I mean, I learned to dive back in 1991, I think, but it's always been something that I wanted to do. My parents were both scuba divers, and I grew up just tripping over dive gear around the house, much like I do in my own house now. And I was always a swimmer, and it was just a natural thing. It was something that I always knew I was going to do, and the opportunity kind of came up in the early 90s, and I jumped on it, really, and I've been diving all around the UK ever since.
Oh, and is the UK your passion, or you go abroad as well?
So I do a lot abroad, but if you have to ask me what kind of a diver I am, I'm a UK wreck diver. I sometimes expand that a bit to say I'm a Northern European wreck diver, but but at the end of the day, this is where I learned to dive. This is what I do. I don't get to do as much of it as I used to because I tend to travel a lot and work abroad a lot. But still, the UK holds some amazing kind of draw for me still to this day.
Yeah, well, we're advocates of UK diving. I mean, there's so many sites here to visit in the UK and dive. It's an amazing place, and there's something for everybody. So, what's your favourite UK dive site then? I guess Scapa Flow.
Well, Scapa Flow is high on the list. I tend to go up there once a year for the last kind of 6-7 years now, and then I was there kind of sporadically before that. But I've really kind of got back into Scapa. But then, I live down in the southwest of England, and the Cornish coast, the Dorset coast is really where I cut my teeth learning to dive. And for 20 years in between that, I lived in Sheffield, and the whole northeast coast, the Farne Islands, St. Abbs, you can't choose between them, really. They're all so different, so diverse, and they've all got something for everybody, like you said earlier.
Yeah, Farne Islands, Jim and I's one of our favourite UK dive sites. We go up there every single year. What about non-UK? Where else in the world would you say A, perhaps is a favourite dive destination, and B, maybe is on the bucket list that you haven't done yet?
Well, the bucket list is a tricky question, but
yeah.
some of the highlights, I think I'd say, to just kind of expand a little bit from the UK, going over to the west coast of Norway, to me is spectacular diving. It's wreck diving, the visibility is incredible, and the preservation of the wrecks is out of this world. There's a big kind of historical context to that as well, because most of the wrecks that you dive around the UK are sunk during the wars and sunk by the Germans. But if you go over to Norway, then you get an immense sense of national pride, because most of the wrecks that you come across there were sunk by us during the wars. And so same but different. But then
interesting contrast.
It is. Yeah, I love it. I love diving over there. Now you can go further afield than that, and one of the places I do spend a lot of time is out in Croatia. And again, there's lots and lots of wartime wrecks out there. The climate's good, the visibility's good, the environment's a lovely place. And again, the wrecks are relatively intact, apart from the mines that blew them in two pieces as a rule. but again, it's just fantastic pieces of history that are there for you to kind of visit. If you're looking for wildlife and kind of coral reef type things, I've found little that betters the Philippines. I mean, the Philippines I've not been for many years, and I do need to go back, but it's one of the places that I always kind of think about when I think about, you know, biodiversity and marine life and that kind of thing. It's just some incredible diving over there, some very, very cool stuff to see. And then I can't really go much further without talking about cave diving as well, because that's another one of my kind of passions, if you like. And I recently went to Mexico, and I always said for a long time I'd go to Mexico when I'm old. Now, you might argue I am old now, so it was about time I went. But I went to Mexico last year for the first time in reality, and the scenery in those underwater caves is just stunning. And you can do dives that, you know, are not particularly challenging as cave dives go, and just see some things that, you know, will make your jaw drop. Just really quite spectacular places. So
yeah, I was very fortunate to dive in Mexico in the cenotes. It was beginning of 2019. Yeah, so last year. It seems ages ago now. But as you say, stunning scenery. I can't wait to go back and dive them again. And that going between fresh water and descending through that thermocline into salt water and then coming back up is just the strangest experience as a diver that everyone's got to go and experience.
I agree. Yeah, it is a spectacular place.
Yeah.
Excellent. So before we get on to obviously Ghost Fishing UK, what's your most memorable dive that you've done?
Oof, in a good way or a bad way?
I think we should have both, Rich.
Yeah. So, it could, I mean, there's a couple that kind of hit the mark on the most memorable in a good way. I think perhaps this is one from Croatia, diving on a wreck of the HMS Aldenham, which was the last British destroyer sunk in World War II. And to just be on that wreck and the whole history that kind of is entailed with that was just mind-blowing. That was incredible. A wreck dive out in the Baltic called the Mars, which is, you know, several 100-year-old battleship, wooden decks, guns everywhere. And you know that, you know, only 20, 30 people have ever been on that wreck, ever. And then in other good ways, there's another cave that I'm exploring out in Croatia, and me and my partner Christine, we were pushing the front of that line. We were the first humans to ever been there. So again, seeing something that no humans ever seen before is really quite unbelievable. That's a hell of a feeling.
Yeah, that's always a humbling thing, isn't it, to see something like that?
I was just going to say, from perhaps a less positive view, a memorable dive.
I'm an eternal optimist. It's probably something like a dry suit flooding in really cold water, or knowing you've got a long way back to the surface or something like that. I'll be perfectly honest, I try and learn from those events, but I quickly dismiss them as, once I've got the information I need from them, I don't remember them.
That's it.
But they sound familiar.
Yes.
They do sound familiar.
Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you for that. So Ghost Fishing UK, tell our viewers and our listeners on podcast, you know, how did it come about, and what is it all about?
Well, Ghost Fishing UK, it's probably worth going into the background of what the whole ghost fishing project is about. And it's a worldwide effort, really. There are teams of divers all around the world under various different banners that are trying to do this job. And what it is amateur divers going out into the sea and recovering lost fishing gear. And the problem with the lost fishing gear is that fishing gear is very resilient stuff by nature of the job that it has to do. And once you lose that fishing gear, it continues to catch animals. It doesn't know it's lost. So fish get caught in it, the fish get caught in that net, and then they ultimately die. And then they become bait for bigger animals, which come in and eventually get caught in that net, and then they die. And this horrible cycle continues. And nobody knows where this cycle stops. And nobody knows how long this net is going to carry on fishing. I mean, the ultimate end point of all this fishing gear is that it will become microplastics in the ocean. But that could take hundreds and hundreds of years. In all that time, this gear is going around catching animals, which is, it's cruel, it's unnecessary distress and pain for an animal. It's fish that will never be landed. It will never be eaten. So that fishing gear is being effectively very wasteful, because, you know, animals are dying for no reason. Now, we don't blame the fishing industry for this in any way at all. I like to eat fish. I have no problem with that. However, just going fishing, it's an inevitable consequence, unfortunately, of that fishing gear gets lost. I don't think it generally happens deliberately. And, you know, I don't really want to believe that it does. But the thing is, it does happen. It's a very harsh environment, and stuff gets lost. So I can remember right back to 1991, when I learned to dive, one of the very first things that I saw was a fishing net tangled up on a wreck, and consequently animals being caught in that fishing net. And it just became a normal part of reality for me. It's just a thing that happens on dives. You see fishing gear and there's nothing you can do about it. And in 2014, I think, I was working over in Croatia and I had a week off. And there was a Dutch guy by the name of Pascal van Erp, who set up the original Ghost Fishing Foundation. And he had a project going on a wreck called the Argo. And the Argo was ex-HMS Flint. She was a mine layer, I think. And she'd been bought after World War II and is now a freighter. And she hit a mine and sank in about 45, 48 meters of water. And I use this wreck for training all the time. And they were doing a project to recover some huge fishing nets that had been draped all over the stern of this wreck. And he said, "Do you want to join?" And I thought, well, what else am I going to do? You know, I've got a week off and I'm here in this brilliant diving place. So yeah, let's go do something good. And I realized that, you know, this kind of project would be brilliant back in the UK, because, you know, any UK diver will tell you they'll see fishing nets and hooks and lines and lost pops and all that sort of stuff. So I chatted to Pascal, and in 2015, he brought 6 of his team over to the UK, and I handpicked 6 of my kind of best divers that I knew. And we met up on Bob Anderson's boat, the Halton, up in Scapa. And they trained us how to remove fishing gear from the sea. And from there, the project expanded, really. And now we're something like 70 members here in the UK. We've trained them all up to be kind of safe, competent ghost fishing divers. And we just crack on at every opportunity, getting out into the sea and lifting nets, basically.
So how big is the problem? How much fishing gear is lost annually?
Well, there's some estimates from the United Nations, and they estimate that every year 640,000 tons of fishing gear get lost in the sea. All right, 640,000 tons every single year. Now, I was thinking about this, and I can't even comprehend what that looks like. I have no idea what 640,000 tons of fishing gear looks like. So I tried to base it on some of the stuff that we've collected in our kind of experiences. And if you know what like a 1-ton building bag looks like, you know, it's about a meter cube, something like that.
Yeah.
When we fill one of those up with fishing gear, that weighs just short of 100 kilos. So I thought, all right, how many of those building bags would we manage to fill up before we get some kind of gauge on how much fishing gear gets lost in the sea every single year? So I calculated it, and it didn't help, because it's 6.4 million bags of fishing gear. And I don't know what 6.4 million of anything looks like. One day maybe I'll know, but it's incomprehensible. So I started thinking harder and harder about how I could explain to people how much fishing gear gets lost. And I thought, well, what can I fill up with 6.4 million bags? All right. And I came up with a bunch of things. And the most accessible thing I could kind of get people to understand was, you know, the London Tube network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's actually about 200 kilometers of of tunnels underground. It's about 400 kilometers of tube network, but only 200 kilometers of it is underground. Okay?
That's right.
So you could fill up every single London Underground tunnel 3 times every year with lost fishing gear. And that's still insane to me. I still can't get my head quite around that, but I have traveled a lot on the tube and I know how big and extensive it is. But if you just imagine stacking bag upon bag upon bag, and in 4 months you'd have done your first run, then you do another run, and you do another one. You get to do that 3 times.
I still can't even comprehend that, to be honest.
I can't get my head around it at all.
No,
that much fishing gear gets lost every year.
So we know where the problem comes from. Obviously, fishing vessels. We know how much, obviously, is lost. The 640,000 tons. I still don't understand how that gets into this. How they lose that much? How does it get lost?
Like I say, I don't believe that it's lost deliberately. I mean, fishing nets are expensive, and they're people's livelihoods.
They've got to replace what they lose.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a tool of the trade, so they're not going to deliberately throw it away. Now, things get caught, don't they? I mean, bad weather. You may have to abandon a net if you get caught on a reef or stuck on a wreck or something like that. And again, maybe it has to get cut free. And things like shellfish traps, lobster pots and creels and those kind of things, they're put in place, and a buoy goes on either end to mark it. And if a storm comes through and knocks those buoys off, then that gear is lost. Nets that are static and get left in place for a couple of days and they come back and pick them up suffer the same problem. If the buoys and the markers get lost, then again the fishing gear gets lost. So there's a number of kind of non-deliberate ways of losing fishing gear, and I think that needs to be made clear that this is not a deliberate act in most cases, because why would you throw away the tools of your job, the thing that gives you your livelihood? Doesn't make sense to me.
Sure, and the cost and the value, and having to go and replace it so that you can continue your job.
Well, exactly.
Clearly, you can't just go out randomly diving looking for nets. So I guess you're relying on us divers to report nets that they've seen, so that you can go and do something about it. Is that right?
Do you know, Craig? You're absolutely right. One of our most valuable resources is everyday divers going out there, and we know you see it because I'm an everyday diver as well. I see this stuff. So all you've got to do is tell us where it is, and we've got an online reporting system which is on the website www.ghostfishing.co.uk. There you go, there it is. And on there is a report page, and it takes you a couple of minutes to fill it in. You don't need to be an expert on fishing gear. You don't need to be an expert in marine life. Tell us what you see. It's as simple as that. And that goes into our files. And what we do then is we collect up all this information. We find hotspots, or we get a report or something. We think, oh, that report or that net really needs to come out as quick as we can. So we can focus our activities based on these reports. Only takes a minute or two to do it. You can do it from your phone. It's dead easy. So any diver can do this. Anything you see, tell us. And when we get the resources, we will go and get it.
And what about if you want to do a bit more then? What about training to do this? I think, Craig, you were going to do this, weren't you, in February?
I have put my name down on the website last year, yeah, but clearly under COVID lockdown, I guess that's why we've not heard anything back, and possibly because I'm East Coast based and perhaps less calls out on this side of the coast with the poor visibility where we are in East Anglia.
Well, East Anglia there's a lot of fishing goes on off East Anglia, I think, and there's certainly a lot of fishing gear lost off there. So I'm keen to get a presence up there. But let me kind of come back to the question: is how do you get further involved? There's a couple of ways really. The next kind of level on really is to come out and help us on the boat. We always need surface managers. We always need people that don't mind getting down and dirty, and because when all that stuff comes to the surface, you know, it's not just a case of putting your little fishing net in and scooping it onto the deck. It's heavy, it's smelly, it's nasty, and it needs some manpower to pull it in really. So if you want to help on the deck with that, you're very, very welcome. It also gives you a great kind of overview, if you like, of how we work as a team. So if you were interested and weren't quite sure if you fitted into the whole kind of team of divers, then please come along and see that we're all pretty friendly, really, and we'll help you kind of engage with it. The next layer of it is to come and get trained. Now, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but most divers, when they see fishing nets, they tend to go the other way. There's a good reason for that, because fishing nets are designed to catch animals, and a diver is just as much of an animal as a fish or a seal or anything else. So we tend to avoid them. We tend to kind of take a look at them and go, oh, let's go the other way. There's a great big fishing net lurking around over there.
Yeah.
But our ghost fishing divers have to do quite the opposite. They have to go into that net. They have to release it from the wreck or the reef and somehow get it up to the surface. And that's not just something you do on a whim. And we want to kind of get that over to people. So we run a training course, which I want to kind of reiterate this now. This is not like a normal training course you're going to take in a dive shop. All right. We've had people come in and go, oh, I want to take the training. Take some money and we'll do it next week. I say, well, we're all volunteers and nobody gets paid for doing this. So you'll do it when we've got a slot to fit you in. So I think it's important to get that over. Our primary job is to go and remove nets from the sea. Our secondary job is to build up the team. It's not that we don't want people, but don't approach it like you do your local dive shop course. Well,
no, of course, you've got to prioritise, haven't you? Prioritising getting the nets out is the most important part.
Surely you need some sort of experience and technical ability as well. It's not a recreational diving course.
Right. So I'll talk a bit more about the training course, because that kind of covers your question a bit, I think, really. So one of the things that's kind of I kind of outlined it already. The problem with ghost fishing is you're dealing with dangerous fishing nets. Okay, and we need to make sure that your diver is capable of managing those nets, but also, if you do get a little bit tangled up in it, it's not going to be the end of the world. You're going to remain calm. You're not going to freak out, and your team is there to kind of support you in that activity. So there's a couple of things that we need to put into place. And the first thing of that is making sure all your equipment is nice and tidy. Okay, you've all seen pictures of divers that have got all kinds of product hanging off of them. Yeah. All right, let's put it that way. All right, which may be fun for going for your everyday recreational dive, but it doesn't lend itself to a ghost fishing activity where you're in close quarters with monofilament net. You're going to get tangled up. So we've got to tidy up the equipment. The second thing we've got to do is to make sure that you've got a basic ability with buoyancy and positioning, so that you're not going to crawl through a net. You need to be able to float like a butterfly, basically, to use the phrase. So we've got to tidy that up a little bit. It's not difficult. You've just got to think about your buoyancy, think about how you sit in the water, to make sure that now your nice tidy equipment, you're not going to, you can tangle anything if you try, believe me. Okay, but make sure your own actions are not going to get you into any more trouble. And then we've got to get you working more or less as a team. And that basically, because of those factors, what we're doing is we're asking people to have 100 dives, which is not particularly excessive for most people. We're asking that you've done at least 20 of those in the last year, which some people may struggle with. But one thing I do know is project work like this, you need to be current with your diving. Sure. So 20 dives in a year, we thought was a reasonable kind of level that people should be at. And the final thing is we want you to dive with a twin set, ideally twin 12s. We will take side mount if you can show that you're properly functional with it, i.e. you don't need help kitting it up, and you can share gas with a teammate if you need to, and all those kind of things. So twin set use, decent skills in the water, and nice tidy equipment. That's really what we want to get to. Now, if you don't have those, it's not difficult to go and get those skills. And if you want advice on where to get that training, we will happily advise it. We don't offer training at that level, but we'll say, go and see this instructor, or go to this shop and buy that thing. Okay, and basically we'll guide them through it always.
And like you say, I mean, I'm not a twin set diver, Craig is, but I could get involved in other ways, like you said, getting on the boat and helping all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the first phase of the training, is to get you kind of comfortable in the water, really, and well prepared to start dealing with fishing net. The second thing we've got to do, which is day 2 of the class really, is to teach you how to survey. Now, survey is perhaps to us almost more important than the recovery itself, because the survey does 2 things for us. Firstly, it tells us what fishing gear is down there and what's caught in it. So there's some important kind of scientific-ish data going on there. You know, unless we know how much fishing gear is out there, how much is actively catching animals, and what kind of animals it catches, we're not really in a position to say, hey, ghost fishing is a problem. So collecting that data is super important for the ongoing kind of mission, if you like. And the second thing is the survey allows us to build a proper, robust plan for removing that gear. Quite often we'll survey a wreck and we'll find a net that's tangled up all over it. And it's like, you can look at it and you go, I have no idea how we're going to fix that, how we're going to get this back to the surface. At that point, it's not a smart idea to start whipping out your knife and starting chopping away at it. You want to get back to the surface, draw sketches, join up with other people's sketches and survey data, and try and build a plan of how you most effectively get that net back to the surface again. So the survey captures the information that we need for the bigger picture in terms of how much fishing gear and what kind of life does it catch, but also the direct planning of how you're going to remove the gear. So that's phase 2. And we still do work very closely with Sea Search, and they've really helped us in telling us how to do surveys. The survey doesn't have to be down to the Latin name of every species or anything like that. I don't need to know the diameter of every strand of that fishing gear. You know, real kind of kids' crayon pictures. Okay, and I kind of joke about it, but I say if you can tell the difference between a fish and a crab, ultimately that's all we need to know. If you can tell whether it's big net or small net, that's again all we need to know, and then do a crayon sketch with it. That's all you need to know. All right, that's how you do a survey. But you've got to bring some information back to the surface that helps us on the final phase of this, which is going and getting it. And that's the final phase of the training, where we teach people how to use lifting bags. We teach people how to use big sharp knives. And you might think, well, how hard could it be to use a sharp knife? But the number of times I've given a briefing, even to experienced divers, and say, look, this is a really sharp knife, be careful with it. And they go, yeah, we know knives are sharp. 30 seconds later, they come back and they go, my finger, it's leaking blood everywhere. And I said, it is sharp, isn't it? I said, yeah, I told you it was sharp 5 times. And you had to test it with your finger, didn't you? So you've got the 3 components to your training there. You've got basically tidy up the dive skills and equipment and make sure you're safe and able to engage, teach you how to survey, and then teach you how to use knives and lifting bags. So once we get through that, we actually ask that you come on a live project with us. So you've got to come down, you've got to do the real survey, and you've got to do the real lift. So we call it live training. So it's the final piece in the puzzle. There's no point just training people in a quarry how to use a lifting bag. You've got to go out there and do it for real. And then you're in.
So that actually was my last question. I was just about to answer. You just answered it. Is all of the training done on an inland lake? And you just mentioned a quarry. So clearly, the initial part of the training you do in a controlled environment in one of the inland dive centres in the UK. Right.
So we've been really well supported by Cape and Ray, by NDAC, and by Vobster as well. We don't exclusively dive those, but like you say, they're so convenient for this kind of thing. They don't mind if we find a corner of the quarry and drop some net and lobster pots in. So they've always, and they deserve a great deal of thanks for supporting this project. However, the Southwest guys, the Cornish teams, they will dive in, again, at sheltered areas, confined areas, to get all the skills working before you take it out in anger, if you like.
So you mentioned you got 70 members across the UK,
yeah.
And you'd obviously like more of a presence in the UK, in the East Anglia, which Craig volunteered for. Is there any other areas where you need more support?
Yeah, I mean the east end of the channel is just covered in net. I know this already. It's not my favorite diving area, but I know people that love it, and I think we've got a lot of people in that region that, you know, Littlehampton and East, that desperate to kind of go and clear some of those nets out. And I think probably that will be our focus for this year if we get back in the water in reality. But certainly once we get moving again, we're gonna try and train some teams down that way. East Anglia is always, it's a more tricky problem out in East Anglia because there's not much diving infrastructure. Most of the diving, as I understand it, is done off ribs, and ribs are not good platforms for ghost fishing. You can put the divers in and out on them, but you've got nowhere to put the net once you get it back to the surface again.
Sure. Yeah.
So it needs a bit of a head scratch, that one.
Yeah. Yeah, although, you know, I'm sure that, you know, like lots of your volunteers already, I mean, I'd be more than happy to travel from, you know, to Scotland or the South Coast or anywhere. I just wanted to ask you, Rich, all this it's a brilliant job, and you're getting all this gear out, and what happens to it? Where does the recovered fishing nets actually go?
That's a really good question, and it's kind of, there's a company out in Slovenia which is the kind of big flagship project of this. And what these guys do is they take fishing nets and they reprocess it into a fabric called Econyl. And Econyl is basically like a nylon lycra type, not quite lycra, but you can make it into something very much like lycra. And you can make t-shirts, socks. Fourth Element, the great British diving manufacturer, use Econyl in quite a lot of their products. So there's a pathway for fishing net that can get turned into something that is a very, very high quality yarn, which can be used, like I say, in swimsuits and socks. There's a company up in Manchester, I think, called Milliken, and they make carpets with this fabric as well. So getting it out to Slovenia and getting it recycled, particularly for the right kind of net, is again another really cool thing that you can do with it. Now, we've found other kind of small avenues for recycling as well. There's a guy up in Scapa Flow, up in Orkney, actually, a guy called Mark Cook, and he takes ropes and he makes the most beautiful kind of doormats and doorstops. It's all knotwork, but he takes all shot lines and kind of the header ropes from the fishing nets, and he basically washes them, cleans them all, and then turns them into doormats and other kind of ornamental ropework stuff, which is a really nice kind of end life for those things. We get a constant stream of people asking us for things for like artistic displays and that kind of thing. We're more than happy to kind of supply those, but we're never quite sure what it is that they want, and if they're really prepared for the stinking filth that they're going to get, they're going to have to come and pick up and manage, because it's not pleasant stuff at all. So we're always looking for different kind of recycling, upcycling pathways.
So is it actually cost effective to get it all the way to Slovenia? I presume that's done by truck, is it? What you actually recover?
So at the moment we've got, I don't know, something like 4 tons of fishing gear waiting to make it cost effective to ship it out. In terms of the efficiency of it, the last load we sent out had something like an 85% yield. So of the fishing gear that we sent out, 85% of it ended up as Econyl, which I was staggered by. I thought it would be a tiny yield.
Fantastic.
But it kind of gives me hope that it's actually worth kind of getting it shipped out.
And so how's that funded, Rich? Is that personal wealth, or is it?
A diving instructor, I don't have any of that. You are funny. All right, so a lot of the work that we did over the last year or two was funded by an organization called Healthy Seas, and their mission really is to take the waste material, which is the recovered ghost gear, and get it turned into a final product. And they operate at at every point in that sequence. And they've been really helpful funding us for a bunch of projects last year, and for shipping nets and stuff out to Slovenia. So some of the funding will come from organizations like that. A lot of it comes from divers like you guys, on our donate page. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Just simple donations like that. So in recent times, we've been funded very kindly by the Sea Life Trust. Now, the Sea Life Trust run things like the Seal Sanctuary in Gweek down in Cornwall, the Cornish Seal Sanctuary. But they're a charity that is basically allied to the Sea Life Centre in London, and their network covers sea life centres all around the world, actually. So they've been really kind in funding a couple of our projects, and they're very committed to continuing to support the work that we do over the coming years as well. So our funding comes right from the smallest £5 donation right up to several £1,000s of donations that comes from the bigger charities like Sea Life Trust and Healthy Seas, and everything in the middle as well. So we're really grateful to all of our supporters, however small or big. It's just incredibly important to what we do. Every penny of that money basically goes into doing what we do.
That's excellent, and this is a time when UK charities particularly are really affected by the COVID-19, and so I know it's a tough time for all UK charities, but any divers that want to help, we just put up the donate page on the ghostfishing.co.uk website there. What else can we do, Richard? So we can obviously let you know when we spot the nettings. We can help donate, and we can get on board and volunteer and come and help pull some of this crap out of the ocean.
I just want to say one more thing about donating, particularly in this COVID-19 environment. I know that a lot of people are strapped for cash at the moment, and I understand that things are tight. But I'm going to say something that you might not expect. If you don't have the spare money, don't give it to us, please. All right, please don't do that. I would rather you kind of get yourself sorted, get yourself back on your feet again, and crack on. Donate when you can afford it. We will survive, because we're not diving. Like I said, all the money goes to our diving, and we're not diving. So please hold off until it's time.
No, it's a difficult thing to say. I mean, for a lot of people, they can't even afford to go diving because things are tough for a lot of us now. I'm tapping Jim for a loan tomorrow to get some tank filled.
You should. You look fairly minted anyway. So
he's the one with the personal wealth.
If only.
All right. What else can you do? Well, you can report those nets to us when you see them. Even if you remember something, as long as your memory's fairly clear on it, if you remember that you saw something from last season, stick that in as a report. Just tag a note in that you saw it last June or whenever it was, and we'll be able to kind of filter that out a little bit. You can invite us to come and give talks at your dive club or your dive shop. We're more than happy to send people out. That's not a problem at all. I've done talks in schools, not that they're working at the moment, but it's been a long time since I've been in a school assembly, and it's kind of a weird, scary thing to have to take an assembly. I remember sitting at the back and getting shouted at, but I'll give school assemblies, talks in dive clubs, dive shops, anything like that. Any kind of help that you want from us in that kind of regard, no problem at all.
Excellent. It's all about raising awareness.
Yeah,
exactly what it is. Yeah.
And when you come to looking at East Anglia, obviously you've got Craig there. I'm more than willing to help, even though I can't do the diving on the twin sets. So I'm more than happy to pull out ropes and nets and things. So that's two of us you got.
That'd be brilliant. That would be absolutely brilliant. We will find a way. I don't know where we could do it over in East Anglia, but if you can travel to somewhere, we can get the training done there, and then we can probably sit down and have a chat about how we make the logistics work properly over there. Yeah, that's my biggest challenge.
We've just a couple of episodes ago, we had Captain Ray and Vobster on as guests of the show, and as we said to them, as soon as we're allowed, we will be out and traveling around, and Jim and I are going to get a bit of a road trip done. But yeah, I mean, I will travel anywhere. So, you know, South Coast Scotland, you know, wherever it needs to be, I'm happy to travel for training, and also to get out on a boat in the South Coast to come out with you guys and see what you do.
Well, let's do a follow-up episode on the dive line then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. We'll very much look forward to that. Rich, we thank you so much for coming on, for talking about what you do and the fantastic work. And for those that can and are able to support, please do so. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Jim. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope your viewers have enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
I'm sure I have. Thank you
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.